Hi there, this is Sandra with the Mortgage Center. We are going to start shortly, and we're just going to start waiting for all of the attendees for the webinar. So thanks everyone for who's joined on time. Guys, excited to get going? This is wonderful. Thank you. So as I said, I'm Sandra. I'm the principal broker with the Mortgage Center, and tonight we've got some of the best realtors in Guelph and the surrounding area with us tonight. So I've got Irene Zabel with Home Group Realty, Ryan Waller. He's also with Home Group Realty, and Raji with Coldwell Banker Newman Real Estate. And the reason why I've asked these three realtors to join us is they're all three are seasoned real estate investors, but they also have a wealth of experience. And tonight, actually, what we're going to be talking about is for those clients who have owned real estate and have owned it for at least 5 years, you probably have some excellent equity built up in your property, and you're thinking about, well, like how can I get ahead with the real estate that I own? And really tonight, what we're going to be talking about is accessing the equity in your primary residence to either buy other real estate or to maybe do some renovations on your house. So if you're thinking about either of those, thanks so much for joining us tonight. To start, we're going to look at purchasing rental properties and how to go about doing that. And as I said, the best way to sort of raise the capital for a down payment, because typically when you're buying a rental property, you need something somewhere between 20 and 35% as a down payment. A lot of people don't have access to that cash. I certainly, have some money, but most of the equity that I have is tied up in real estate. So oftentimes what people do is they'll use the equity in their home and leverage that to buy real estate. And the best way to do that is through a secured line of credit. So if you have a home, let's just say, and the value is about 800,000, you can access up to 80% of the value of the property typically in equity. So if I just kind of run the quick math for you, if I just say your house is worth 800,000, I multiply that by 80%, that's 640,000. Now, a lot of people that I work with still have mortgages, and if you have a mortgage of about 200,000, that means you have about 440,000 in equity that you can use to leverage to buy real estate, other properties. So the reason why we recommend a secured line of credit on your home is whenever you invest in real estate, that secured line of credit, the interest becomes a tax deduction. And when we're running the cash flow numbers, typically what we do is we include not only that the rental income would cover the mortgage payments on the rental property and all of the property taxes and utilities and whatever else, but we also try to include the payment on the secured line of credit that you would be taking from your primary residence. Okay, so I wanted to kind of start with Ryan. Ryan, tell me a little bit about, I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about like buying real estate and cash flow. So can I ask you, so what is cash flow and why is that
Yeah.
important?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different measures out there for investors when they're looking at rental properties, all sorts of acronyms and different metrics. But the reality is the most important one is cash flow. And cash flow is simply making sure that the income that you bring in or the rent covers all of the expenses related to owning the property. So as an example, if your rent is $2,000 a month and the total expenses, and don't conveniently forget any of them, you have to make sure that you include all of the actual expenses in it, that $2,000 covers all the expenses. And if it does, and your total expenses are $1,700, then your cash flow positive $300 per month. And that really is the most important thing. Early in the year in Guelph, properties were very, very expensive, and it was almost impossible to find anything that cash flow positive in Guelph. But now that prices are coming down, there are starting to be properties out there that are pretty darn close, if not cash flow positive again. So you only get one crack at it. So if you're buying a house and you do all the numbers and you make sure that it is cash flow positive, you're going to be in a good position down the road.
Yeah, and I think that's really important is like, I feel like when you're buying a real estate investment, you're not kind of shopping for a property in the same way you would if you were actually going to be living in it.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's not as
So,
emotional. It's a financial investment.
right. And does it make sense? Now,
Yeah.
Irene, you've got some great experience with owning and managing rental properties, and you've also helped other clients buy properties. You've kind of got a favorite type of property to buy, right?
I do. I do. So my favorite property would be the 2-unit home, particularly bungalows where you have 3 bedrooms up and 2 bedrooms down. Might be 1950s, 1960s bungalows. Can be done with other properties too, but that is one of my favorites. And, you know, if you take it on a line of credit, let's say you had a bit more expensive house and your line of credit was $800,000. You could buy a property at 6%, be $4,000 a month interest, and your rent could be anywhere from $4,500 to $5,000. And that's where Ryan's cash flow comes in, because that house would cash flow positive. Now, I will say, because Guelph is a high, our properties go up fairly substantially, it's generally difficult to get any kind of profit. But if you can get very close to break even, you're doing very well. And as rents continue to go up, within a couple of years, you would be above break even.
Yeah, and you know, we are at a very unusual time with mortgage rates and mortgage financing. Like right now, what I'm finding is that rates are unusually high just because of inflationary pressure. So that kind of speaks, Irene, to the fact that like lots of times when we're doing rental properties, and if we're doing like right now, we could recommend I could recommend a shorter term, like a 1 or 2 year fixed rate term. And then what we might end up seeing is we're going to start to see some relief in interest rates. And what the economists are forecasting is in a third and fourth quarter of 2023. So it's not a bad idea right now to kind of do a shorter term. Just, you know, you might be breaking even, and we are going to start to see some relief on interest rates the latter part of 2023.
Yeah,
Right.
so that would be excellent.
Now, Raji, you've got some really great experience with student rentals. And, you know, like I think the one thing I wanted to say is I think student rentals get a bad rap because all of the charter banks like TD, Scotia, and RBC absolutely hate financing student rentals, like they run for the hills. But I think that's incorrect. Do you want to comment on that?
Absolutely. Student rentals are a great way of renting. And I've had clients that have had great experience. You know, I have personally have great experience. And you can be, you know, a lot of people are scared when they look at student rentals. Don't need to be scared, because if you look at students that are mature students that are in, you know, 3rd year, 4th year, or in masters, those are students that are serious. They're looking for a career. They want to study. They want to, you know, make a career out of themselves. So it's a great opportunity to rent to those students. Those, and the other advantage is those rentals are usually about a year, maybe 2. So what it does is it gives an opportunity as an investor that after a year or 2 years, you can rent your place again to the market value of what the rental is going. Instead of, for example, we had a 1.2% increase on rent, and right now in 2023, it's 2.5% increase in rent. So it gives an investor to be competitive with the market and ensure that, you know, you're getting your rent to have a better cash flow, and it's a better investment. So I think student rentals are great if you do it right, and there's a lot of great students out there.
Yeah, and what's interesting, so when we're like with student rentals, do you typically charge per room?
So yes, you can charge per room, or you can have, most of the people, what they do also is investors, they have one lease. And most of the time you will have, so if you have a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom house, you can have one lease where the students can, come in with their 3 or 4 friends and have one lease on it. So you have those options, but you can also rent it by room. So you can do it either way, whichever way you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think for financing purposes, like we can do, like obviously we need confirmation of the rental income because that's often required to help qualify the mortgage. So we can take multiple ways of leasing the property, either through one lease or multiple leases. Now I want to change gears a little bit and sort of close the conversation around accessing the equity to do some renovations, right? Because that's kind of like an investment as well. I feel like when you're improving your own house, you're improving the value of the property, and I see that as an investment. Irene, I wanted to start with you, and sort of, it's funny because about 4 or 5 years ago, I thought like a major renovation was about 40,000. I think, and now I'm saying, okay, like if you're going to do a major renovation, you're going to be looking at what I think a major renovation would be about 75,000. And so the reason why I bring that up is really because of the extra costs in accessing the equity in your house to get that amount of money, there is going to be a legal fee and an appraisal cost. So to make it worth a borrower's value, I'm talking about like major renovations in the area of 75,000. And when someone's doing a major renovation, they're often asking me, well, is it better to put it on a line of credit or refinance just my mortgage? And I'm always recommending that refinancing the mortgage is the best way to do that, because now you don't have 2 payments that you have to tackle, the mortgage and the line of credit. If you can get the equity out of your house just by refinancing that mortgage and getting the cash out, you're going to have 1 payment and you can just kind of focus on paying that down. So Irene, tell me a little bit more about some of the considerations when you're doing these kinds of renovations.
Okay. So the one thing to consider is how soon you'll be selling, and will you be living in the renovation? Not during the renovation, that's a whole nother story, but living in the renovation. So let's say you're thinking of selling 5 years down the road, but you want to do a renovation. Then really the 3 main large renovations are kitchens, bathrooms, and adding more space by finishing a basement or an attic. And if you're going to do a major renovation, to do one of those 3 things, well, or 1 or 2 of those 3 things to suit your family. Like if you're 2 people living in a 3,000 square foot house, you probably don't need to finish the basement. But an updated kitchen and updated bathrooms would be a great idea. The one thing I don't recommend is, and I see this often, and you guys can chime in afterwards, but is renovate your bathrooms and leave your kitchen original. It looks really weird and people just really wonder about that. So if you're going to do either, if it's an either or, do the kitchen and maybe do a refurbish on the bathrooms. But really look at how you're going to live in the house and do what suits your life choice. But those are the 3 things that'll give you the biggest increase in value of a major renovation.
That's great. Now, Raji, you had a sort of an interesting take on using equity in your house. Maybe tell us a little bit about that your idea. I thought that was interesting.
So for me, like, if you're doing investing money in your house, then you should get something in return. Either you're upgrading the value of it. For me, best way is, do a basement, make a basement apartment, whether it's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom basement apartment, and generate that income, especially in Guelph, where there is such a demand in rental units, so there's such a demand in rent. It's a great way to have an extra income coming in. It's also increases the value of your house. So, when you're planning to sell the house later on, it does add value to your house, but also it gives you a lot of income. And that income can be substantial, and your return on investment is, way better if you do a basement apartment than buying a separate property if you are not able to do that. So that's another way of increasing your income and paying off your mortgage fast.
Yeah, and that can actually, that's interesting because I feel like you could probably get a decent basement renovation, a very good basement, 2-bedroom basement renovation for about 75,000 with a kitchen and a bathroom and 2 bedrooms.
Absolutely.
Now, Ryan, your perspective is interesting because you're going to be the foil on this. Because your take is a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, there are times where it is better just to move. There are situations where I'll give 2 examples. One of them would be over improving your home. So doing renovations that increase the value so much of your home that you now have put so much money into it that you are outvalued in your neighborhood. So if your neighboring homes are all getting 700,000, but you've done a substantial renovations that you think should make your home worth $1 million, it might be a challenge to get that money out. And you might just be better to take that money before doing a renovation and just move to a more suitable home. The other one is somebody trying to over improve a home that maybe they've already grown out of, and trying to make the renovations work in a home that they don't really have the space for. So if it's a young family trying to renovate an existing 1,000 square foot floor plan, when really what they need is 1,500 square feet, and just deciding that perhaps I need to not put the money into the house and just move on to a bigger house. The other thing I just wanted to mention on that is that if you are going to be doing renovations in a home, don't do overly trendy renovations in a home. Do generic, popular with the masses type renovations, because oftentimes people think if they put $100,000 into a renovation, they're going to get that $100,000 out, and not every buyer is going to have the same taste as you. So not everybody is willing to pay what you've put into it, and so go a little more conservative on your renovations, especially if you're moving in the next few years.
Yeah, and so no orange cabinets for your
That's right.
kitchen.
That's right. That's right. Avocado green.
Yeah, more classic
Yeah,
renovations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are wonderful conversations, and I thank you so much for your input, Irene, Raji, and Ryan. I am going to wrap things up right now and just let people know, like, we all of us love working with people who are buying and selling. And what I really enjoy about working with Irene, Ryan, and Raji is that they always put the client's interest top of mind, and that's always their driving force. So if you are looking for good people to work with, please reach out to them. And thank you again for sharing your information and your knowledge.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice
Thank you,
afternoon
Sandra.
or an evening.
evening.
Okay,
Thank
bye
you.
bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.